I think I finished with the story of giving several old ladies heart attacks at my baptism when I jumped out of the font with my see-through pants on. I just want to pick up from there and go back to the quote that I shared at the beginning. Remember Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, "Gradually it was revealed to me that the line separating good and evil does not run between states, does not run between classes, does not run between political ideologies. The line between good and evil runs through the heart of every man and through every man's heart." And he said, this line shifts inside us, it oscillates with the years and even within hearts, overwhelmed with evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. I want to praise God for that reality, that in the midst of all the darkness that I found myself in, God was able to just somehow resonate with that. But he also said, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, that even in the best of all hearts there remains an uprooted small corner of evil. I shared the story of Doreen Irvine and how coming out of evil is not so easy. The devil doesn't want to let you go, especially when you've made a pact with him. And I want to share with you the most profound thing, the thing ever did in my life. I talked about getting involved in the dark side of the drug world, the money side of it, and going up to Blenheim continuously. After 10 years, I clawed myself to the top of the heap. And as I said, if I shared with you some of the stories, you'd think I was making them up. You'd think these are too impossible. But finally, I arrived. Almost seems a story of my life. I get to the point of achievement and then it collapses, almost in the Canterbury rugby team, and I get banned for 5 years. Almost this, and then over probably 35 plus years ago, I was offered sole business for the whole South Island and the bottom of the North Island. That was worth $1.4 million a year to me. And I just rejoiced. I thought, I've made it. I finally achieved. And I can tell you, $1.4 million 35 years ago is a lot different than what it is today. That was a huge amount of money. I'd risked my life and done crazy stuff to get there. And I don't know if you've ever had this. How many people have heard God speak to them audibly? Some have. Only ever once in my life have I heard God's voice as an audible voice. And I remember what he said to me. I'd achieved the goal. I'd sacrificed family, friends, everything. My whole goal was to achieve in this world. And I heard this voice very clearly speak to me audibly. This is your last chance for salvation. Just those words. Now you remember the words of the Black Sabbath song I shared with you, I think it's too late. It all just was flooding in on me. I didn't know God. I knew the thing was looking after me, and I knew the thing had just spoken to me in an audible voice. I rang the head of the syndicate and I said, "I'm out." And he goes, "What?" And I said, "I'm out." He says, "What are you talking about, man? Why would you do that?" And I said, "I think God just spoke to me." And he said, "You're smoking too much weed, mate." And I said, no, honestly, in my heart, it wasn't just the audible voice, it was like that voice was in my very heart. And I knew that it was telling me that this was time to get out. I said, "No, I just know I'm out." I couldn't believe it. He turned up at my house that night. I didn't know whether he'd shoot me. I didn't know whether they'd come down and take me out. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I knew I had to quit. He turns up at my house. Just him. No one else. No guns. 4 pound of marijuana. Just a little side issue he wanted me to try and help get rid of. I said, "I'm done, mate. I'm out." And he says, "Why?" And I said, I think God spoke to me. He said, "You're serious?" I said, "Yeah, I heard this voice and I know I have to quit." Do you know what he did? He cried. And then if you ever happen to watch this, I remember that vividly. He got emotional. This is his head of a huge criminal syndicate. I said, "What's happening, man?" And he said, "I thought I'd found a friend." I want to tell you, if you ever think about the criminal world, don't go there if you want to be in a social environment. You can trust no one. You can have no close friends. You can't have a close girlfriend. You have to be isolated, and it's a horrible, unfriendly world. But when it was him and I, when we finally, after all of the times they tested me, eyeballed me, and he put me through the rigours, we got to the place where it would just be him and I sitting down. Only thing could happen, one of us could shoot the other. But we could sit down, and for the first time in maybe months, we could talk about real issues. Him and I were on about it. We felt like we were equals, and we could just talk about things that matter. Same thing, everybody talks about family, your emotions. We had a connection. And he said, "Man, are you really, quit?" And then he started to list. He said, "But what about?" And he listed everything that happened to me in the last 10 years. Every time I went to Blenheim, he knew about it. He knew about my crazy behaviours, my threatening behaviours, the risks I took. I said, "How do you know all that?" He said, "Man, we watched you from day one." See, we spent 5 years working out that you weren't an undercover agent. And he said, "We knew you weren't because cops aren't as crazy as you were. You were doing stuff cops wouldn't do. You were insane." And I said, "Yeah, I know." But he said, and then he listed all the stuff. I said, "Man, you're doing all that." It's like he didn't get shot. I realised that all these things that had happened to me, he'd done. And then the business. And he said, we've just offered you the world. And I said, "I'm out." And he said, "Can you get rid of what I got?" So I used to supply the homosexual community because I tell you, they use a lot of drugs to do what they do. And another young guy, and I got rid of it. I made $800 in just under 10 minutes and thought, what am I doing? And that wasn't my normal cut. My normal cut would have been $2,000 for that. I just went, I'm done. Do you know, within 2 weeks, the empire collapsed. Ian went to jail. All of his underlings went to jail. Everybody above me, all his workers in his syndicate went to jail. The dealers I was supplying, apart from the homosexuals, they all went to jail. It was like a movie, where the building's blowing up and the heroes are always running away and the building's exploding, it's collapsing behind me, and I walked away. Didn't go to jail. I was running a legitimate business as a front at the time, and a friend of mine, a guy that was working with me, was a contractor in my business, went into partnership. He had a friend who was a police officer, and he perfed out of the police force. If you don't know what perfing means, that they can take 18 months leave and still hold their job if they get too stressed. Well, this guy got too stressed with his job. He went to the telephone in my friend Don's place, and there was a number written on the wall, and he went, "Whew, what have you got that number for?" Don says, "Why?" He said, "That number there, why have you got that? That's Gordon Gosset's number." And he said, "Well, it's my boss." He said, "Mate, you shouldn't be having anything to do with him." Stuart was his name. He was one of 3 undercover police officers that did 8-hour shifts watching my house. Wherever I went, I was followed, and they had my phone tapped. And in 2 weeks' time, the whole operation was shutting down, and I was going to go to jail for probably 10 years. And God said, "It's time to get out." How good is our God? When we were without strength and ungodly, verse 6. When we were sinners, verse 8 in Romans 5. And when we were his enemies, verse 10 in Romans 5. Praise God. I've got that picture up there because Stuart, the undercover cop who used to try to catch me, I've been on hunting and fishing trips with him. And that was one day's, wrong button. That's one day's fishing, salmon fishing up the Rangitata in the old days. That's all he caught. So he couldn't catch criminals. He only caught a trout. I joked with him. I said, you couldn't catch criminals. You couldn't catch men. You can't catch fish. You can't catch salmon. But praise God, eh? I'm telling you that story because that was God. He said, this is your last chance for salvation. And it's not easy. When you leave God, leave Satan and go into God's service, Satan doesn't let you go. And Kerry could come up here and share what Satan did for her, but I just want to share with you what happened for me after 12 years at the Meatworks. We had a send-off at a hotel, and you'll notice that some guy decided it was a good idea to ride his motorbike through the bar. Why have I got his picture up there? Because I walked away from the dealing. I've talked to the first person I ever tried to share the gospel with was an undercover cop on the Mr. Asia drug syndicate. Smarty became my best friend, and his wife was going to leave him if the priest told her to leave him if he became a Seventh-day Adventist. And he, in tears, the hardest, toughest man I've ever met in my life, broke down in tears and said, I'm choosing my wife over God. And he says, I know what I'm doing. Anyway, we had a going away, and this man rode his motorcycle through the bar. I told them I was out. I was going to tell you about Smarty, the undercover drug cop. I said to him one day, what do you know about me that I didn't tell you? And Ian said, you got out just in the nick of time. He was still involved with the police force, even though I run a contracting shop. And I said, how do you know that? And he said, man, you just escaped. They didn't know where you went because not only did I walk away and they knew the phone calls weren't happening, all the coded phone calls, all that wasn't happening, they also knew that I wasn't travelling away, and a lady walked in and just bought our house as it was. It wasn't completely renovated. She just wanted it. Bought the house from underneath us. We walked to a school teacher's house, a Seventh-day Adventist school teacher's house for a month, went to my mum's house for a month, and then bought the house in the country that we still own today. The police didn't know where we were. They were looking for me and I disappeared. It was all God's doing. I was in bed one night at that home. We hadn't been there long. This is after I gave my heart to the Lord. And I got woken at night by a man in my bedroom. And I looked up and saw there was light coming through the window. I could see who it was. And it was this man here, the man riding that motorcycle. His name is Jim. And my mind's just reeling, not about what's he doing in my bedroom. It was, how did he know where I live? Jim, how does he know where I live? I was just my mind's going through a turmoil as I'm waking up thinking, there's a guy standing in my bedroom. And then I realised, when I looked at his eyes, it wasn't Jim. Anybody who's seen a demon, and there's a book all about demons, and I know whoever wrote it's seen them, they just look like a human being, but where the eyes should be, there's just bright red. And this Jim's standing there with these bright red eyes, and I went, oh, it's a demon. He leapt on the bed and tried to strangle me. I thought I was going to die. I'm trying to wake Kerry. Kerry, save me! But she had an even more dramatic experience with demons when she walked away. This demon's trying to throttle me, and I realised that the only thing I could do was call out on Jesus. I couldn't speak, but in my mind I just called, Jesus, save me, and bang, he was gone. Why the demon chose this guy, I don't know, but I want to tell you, I've met this man twice before. I've met him twice before. Twice since then, sorry, not twice before, twice since then. I've met Jim. Once was at the Spraden Baptist Church. I didn't know he was a Christian. He was at the Spraden Baptist Church when my nephew got baptised. I thought, that's maybe why the demon chose him. Do you know the last time I met Jim? He was sitting right where Des was sitting in this church. Last year, the one time I came in months, in the last part of the year, last time I came to this church, Jim had seen me on TV and thought, I want to catch up with Gordon. The one day I came to this church, he came here, and I saw him come in. I didn't know who he was, but I thought, man, there's a new man arrived here. I need to catch up with him. I don't want him to escape. So immediately the church service finished, I jumped up to go and catch up with the visitor. even though it wasn't my job anymore, and he stood up and wanted to catch up and he said, Gordon, and it was him. I don't know why the demon chose his form, but here he's been in this church. Even in the best of hearts, there remains an unuprooted small corner of evil. So I gave my heart to the Lord, and it wasn't the rockiest road. The old man would still rise up. We had a turbulent time in our marriage and in life as a Christian, but I eventually became an elder in the church, became head elder at Oxford Church, where I first started my Christian journey. And I went through an extremely traumatic event in my life. And I didn't go back to the world of sin, but I just stopped attending church, and I got discouraged, and I was down. I was at my lowest point I think I've ever been at. And I was the head elder of the church, and I hadn't attended church for, was it 3 months or 2 months or something? It was quite a while. I was going mad. In my mind, I thought I'd been out on the weekend doing things that I hadn't. I'd say to people, my workers and contractors and my brother, I said, did I go out with you on the weekend? They go, did I go drinking? Don't be stupid, drinking. I was imagining stuff in my mind. I walked away from God in a way, and I was going through a terribly, terrible, turbulent time. But in the midst of this, we're organising with my dear, dear friend Mark Turner an evangelistic program. Katie, Shah's mum, and Mark, in consultation with me, were organising a revival week, an entire revival week. And it was all being geared up. I didn't know that entire revival evangelistic series was for one person. They ran the whole thing for me. I didn't know that. On the day that it was beginning, Mark Turner arrives at the church, and I'm not there. I'm not there. I was sitting at home. I know exactly where I was sitting. I had my shirt on, had my tie in my hand, and the great controversy was waging. Christ is trying to get me to go. Lucifer's stopping me. I was caught in this chess game, and I was checkmated. I couldn't move. I just could not move. And I'm sitting there thinking, how many people I'm going to disappoint if I don't go? And I'm playing with my tie. And I knew in my heart I wasn't going to go. I wanted to, but I couldn't stand up. Satan had me locked in that chair. Mark Turner says to Katie and Kerry, where's Gordon? Kerry says he's not coming. Give up on him. And she had every reason to say that. Give up on him. And Mark says, how far is it to your house? It's during Sabbath school. They told him he had enough time to drive, hopefully in the speed limit, but probably not, to get to our house and back, in time for him to get up the front and preach. A program that had been advertised, and we had lots of visitors coming to. He screamed to our place, and I'm still sitting there holding on to my tie. He walks in and he said to me, what doest thou here, Elijah? And I didn't respond. He said, what doest thou here, Elijah? This could be the emotional bit. And without a word of a lie, I got up from where I was sitting. I found the strength to stand up. I walked to the window and I said, I'm not John Loughborough. You don't look like Alan White. And it's not snowing. Because Alan White said that to John Loughborough. It's one of the most powerful stories. And he said, Gordon, you've got to come. That was the impetus I needed. I went. He told the children's story, and I was in tears because it was about me. I will still remember it, about a fly-blown lamb. The whole sermon was just hitting my heart. I didn't know. Him and Katie had been praying for months for weeks to get me back. The whole thing was a plan to get me back. And at the end, he did an altar call. And me and a young man stood up. I'm the head elder of the church. And you know, Mark Turner said something that at the time I thought was foolish. Much tears, much weeping. I just made the decision. I stepped across the line and pushed Satan away, and I was no longer caught in the middle of the chess game. I was back on Christ's team. I hadn't gone off and done all the bad stuff I used to do. I was just locked in an inability to come to church. Mark Turner, to the chagrin of many, said, they shared with me that the whole thing was about me, and I thought I picked up on that halfway through your sermon. He said, now you need to do something, Gordon. And I said, what's that? He said, you need to close the evangelism off, the revival off next Sabbath. And I said, I can't do that. But he said, no, you have to do it. And I did. Like John Loughborough, who said, I've laid down my hammer and I've laid down my nails, and by God's grace I'll never take them up again. I was able to do that, and I committed. And from that point, my Christian experience has been one of joy and excitement. In parenthesis, except for the politics sometimes. And I was thrown in the deep end. There was an evangelist came. He's Anthony Kent. He ran here at Ilam Church and he ran at St Martin's Church. And some of you are sitting here today who attended, and I had the privilege of baptising some folk here that came to that program. Anthony Kent at Ilam and St Martin's. And at the end of it, the pastor was handing over to the four pastors who were going to be doing the follow-up evangelism. Tom Tapito, Robert Granger, Peter Rollo. They named them all. They were going to be doing the follow-up. And then without asking me one thing, he said, and Gordon Gosset, would you come up as well? And I went, what? I went up I was a head elder at Oxford, and at St Martin's Church, I ended up doing the follow-up evangelism, and I did them all. Not one of the pastors said a word. I ended up thrown in running an evangelistic program that I didn't even know I was running. And by God's grace, out of the 13 people, we baptised 9. A pastor was taking a baptism service at St Albans. And I've asked him about this, and he said, I don't know why I would have said that. He said, if anybody's thinking about baptism, come and talk to beep, 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 the 3 pastors there, or go and talk to Gordon Gosset. 2 people came to talk to me. I don't know why he mentioned my name. It was the only time I'd ever been in that church, and I was simply a visitor, and I was at Kent Hooper's baptism. 2 people came to me. The conference president allowed me to do the first lay baptism in this union, in these 2 islands, North and South Island. And then from that we ended up starting a thing called River at 4, and that was some of the best times of my life, running River at 4. Our lay evangelism team, we ran evangelism every Sabbath afternoon, we ran big campaigns, and by God's grace he baptised a lot of people, just used me as the hands and feet. We made it on the front cover of the Record magazine. They did put me on Adventist TV, and my argument was always the same. Don't put me here, it's my team. It's the team of 8 that are doing all the work. I'm just the big mouth up the front. But by God's grace, after the success at River at 4, the conference then approached me to become a pastor. And I maybe just need to backtrack. At one point in my life, just before River at 4, I felt like I was treading water as a Christian. I knew all the stuff and I wasn't really using it. And I got down on my knees and I made a vow to God. In fact, I made 2. One was, God, I'm going to start memorising the Bible. And I've done quite a portion now. I've worked out I'm going to have it fully memorised by the time I'm 305, Pastor. But, I'm doing my part. When we go to the wilderness, we all have to be able to have the Bible in our heads because it's taken away from us. So I've done Ephesians, Hebrews and a few other books. We need to volunteer for Numbers and First Chronicles. But anyway, so we ran. I said I'm going to start memorising Scripture, and I'm going to do whatever you ask me to do. And I can tell you, friends, I have never asked to do anything that I've been asked that I'm doing. I've never asked to be a pastor. The furthest thing from my mind, the conference called me to be a pastor. I've never asked to be an evangelist. God asked me to be evangelist. And we ran our group, that's at St Martin's, we ran the very first CHIP program in New Zealand. So all my background and healthy living, lifestyle, cause and effect from the world, I was able to then use in the church. And depression recovery. There's Grandma up there, Reuben. I've had an amazing, privileged life. What did I do there? Oh, sorry. Forgive me, I just hit the wrong button. Got a couple more slides to go. We don't want to go right back to the beginning, do we? We've got a new slide changer, so... Okay, so we ran CHIP programs and we were able to use all of our healthy lifestyle skills, Kerry and I, and by God's grace, she's now doing it full time as an occupation. But I've been extremely blessed because the conference here paid for my education. I didn't realise how blessed and how much of a debt of gratitude I owed until I was with a group of pastors one day and I was going over to Avondale for this course here. And we always used to grunge about having to go there to do this associate degree because after they made me a pastor, I had to get rubber stamped, as it were, get a degree. And just before I went, it was in July, I remember being in a group, talking with a group of pastors, and some of them were saying, oh, they want to go back to Australia, but if they go back there, they've got a $70,000 student loan. And God just spoke to my heart, and I just stepped out of the conversation and thought, wow, thank you, Lord. I didn't realise what other pastors had to do. 4 years, $70,000, and then try and get a job. This conference employed me without having a degree. And they funded everything. And I got there with this group of guys, and a few of them started to say, oh man, back here. And I said, don't ever say a thing against our course. We are the most privileged of men in this conference. And as the journey's gone, I've been asked to go and speak in different places. I've been one step down from heaven. The greatest 10 days of my life. Kerry went to Weimar 2 years in a row and said it's one step down from heaven. I went to Weimar, and I tell you, it was a half a step down from heaven. I didn't want to leave. That was the best 10 days of my life. And I want to say to Island Church, the best 5 years of my life were here. Didn't think it could get any better than Ashburton. But the 5 years that I had here was special and will always remain so. And because of being the pastor here, the first year I started was 2014, I shared a series. And that series then ended up taking me to Ghana to speak in Ghana at the University Church here in Cape Coast. It was a Bible lecture series, and every year they would have Randy Skeet, and I didn't realise what it was all about, and they pushed him aside and got me over. First time they'd ever had a Kiwi at the Bible lecture series, and I've been absolutely blessed as I've walked with the Lord. And I just want to share with you, God reached down into the dirt where I was to draw me. And I just want to honour him in all that I do. And because of this series, I'll tell you this very brief story about how this book came about out of that series in Ghana. But right now, we're going to close Sabbath.